All right, hey Wargamers, doing a late night stream here, just getting a few things organized. But yeah, I wanted to take this opportunity to actually do some painting. We talked about doing some painting last live stream and never got around to it. Today we are going to be doing that painting. And while I'm doing that, I want to talk about the big announcement that's coming tomorrow and kind of share my thoughts before the cat's let out of the bag. So, yeah, basically, if you haven't seen or haven't heard, there's going to be a big announcement tomorrow at Nova about the psychic awakening and what that means exactly for 40K. And of course, GW is saying that this is going to be something that affects every player in 40K. And what that means is not exactly what it sounds, I think. There have been many announcements in the past that they have said will affect every player in the game. And what they mean by that typically is that it will, yeah, it will substantially affect gameplay in a way that everyone will have to deal with in the meta, but not in a way that is necessarily going to provide a new mechanic to the advantage of every army, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean the tower getting psychers or anything like that. Instead, I think there's a few options for what this really is going to be tomorrow. I think probably the most likely thing is that they are going to be announcing endless spells for 40K. In Age of Sigmar, there's these things called endless spells, and they're essentially spells, magic powers, psychic abilities that have a physical manifestation on the board and stay in play for an extended period of time. And in 40K, those I think that's a fairly popular opinion that this is what the announcement is going to be. It's going to be this type of endless spell, ongoing psychic disturbance on the battlefield. And yeah, so that's good for a couple reasons. One is it opens up a whole nother way for psychic abilities to affect the battlefield. It also opens up some really cool modeling opportunities. And of course, Games Workshop, a model company, is happy to supply those models to us. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And so even though not every army has psychers, every army would have to deal with this new type of psychic ability on the battlefield. One thing that I think could be possible in terms of what that means for Tau. Of course, there's the very wish listy possibility that they introduce, a select set of psychers for each army, right? So like maybe we really do get like the Nisakar, or something happens. Maybe ethereals are really revealed to be, an agent of the chaos gods or something, and so we get some sort of psychic ability because of that. I think that's pretty unlikely. Either the Nisakar or the ethereal, but especially the ethereal option seems like it's not going to happen. Um, but another possibility is that they release kind of a set of generic psychic abilities that everyone can use. Not so much that they're psychic abilities, but kind of situational things that can be implemented, more or less, things that are just technology masquerading as a psychic ability, like maybe some sort of booby trap, something like that. Um, Something that everyone can use effectively as a psychic ability, but not necessarily truly being derived from a psyker. Um, kind of like a stratagem, but something with the physical manifestation on it. And they're just kind of lumping it in with this psychic awakening because it follows the same rule set. And I think that's not totally unlikely. I think probably the more likely outcome though would be that they you know have they have psychic abilities for armies that have psychers, but for armies that don't have psychers, they have other types of psychic adjacent endless spells. So in the case of Tau, maybe it's some sort of drone effect. Maybe it's some sort of ethereal effect that takes a physical manifestation as in the form of like an inspiring presence, something like that. A pheromone cloud traveling around the traveling around the battlefield, making Tau units go berserk. Something like that could happen. Maybe it's something playing off of the allies. Maybe it's like uh, you could see different types of like little Vespid bugs or something that are summoned more or less, that are traveling around the battlefield in the same way that an endless spell does. Something like that I could see happening. Maybe like a drone effect, or something to do with like a Kroot hunting party. Those types of things I could see, being treated as endless spells, even though they're not actually psychic abilities. And you could see things, analogous to that happening with other types of armies, like for Necrons, right? The Catan, however you want to pronounce that, they already, essentially manifest psychic abilities, even though they're not actually psychers. They're, they do their own thing, but from a mechanic standpoint, they're treated as psychic abilities. And so we could see something like that for Tau or for Necrons or whoever else. Yeah. So chat's talking about Deny the Witch, how that would be something that they could talk about, or that they could, unveil for everyone. I think, yeah, that would be cool. I don't think we're going to have like a general Deny the Witch, but my guess is that endless spells, like whatever they do with this, would have a built-in mechanic that everyone could utilize, right? So you don't actually have to be able to deny the witch to shut down an endless spell or whatever. And so probably not getting a way to deny the witch for us, but maybe a way to shut down endless spells just as a component of their mechanic, which would be cool. I mean, I guess, well, it really wouldn't be that cool. It would be, to say the least. So, yeah, but yeah, so I'm finally getting some work done on these crisis suits. Uh, oh man, you guys, I did not do a good job assembling them. Uh, it was not a. I tried to rush through it. I tried to do it while not paying close enough attention, and I have paid the price. So there's a few major goofs that I did while assembling these. Uh, I think the most egregious is that I forgot how I forgot how to I forgot where weapons go on crisis suits. So I was cruising along assembling stuff. I'm like, all right, it's time to start magnetizing. So I started magnetizing by drilling down. I'll use this guy for an example because, of course, he's one of my victims here. Um, I started by drilling down this way into the arm instead of drilling down this way into the arm, and honestly, I got through about half of my crisis suits here before I stopped and said, "Wait a minute, how would how would that actually work with the weapon configuration?" And immediately realized my mistake and felt like a total idiot, and then had to go and green stuff all of the arms that I had mangled to patch the giant hole that I had put in them. So, um, yeah, so that was bad. That was bad. Um, and then also, I decided that I was going to just do, one more thing, and that was going to be attach um, the pelvic plate for the iridium suits. And so I just picked up a couple of the legs I'd assembled and said, well, all the legs are the same, so it doesn't matter which one I put this on. Totally ignoring the fact that that's not true. Right, so these are normal legs, and these are uh, iridium legs. And I know webcam isn't the highest quality, but let's see here what we can do about that. But basically, there are these extra panels on the side of the iridium legs, whereas the normal legs don't have those, and the suit configuration doesn't actually work out very well with the iridium pelvic piece on a non-iridium breastplate. So had to do some finagling to get that to line up too, but I ultimately decided that the Chasvray models that I have will use the iridium pelvic plate instead of the iridium suits, because I I cast my vote on that unintentionally. So that's how these are going to work out. I guess Chasvray have cooler pelvic plates than the average guy is how that I'm going to justify that. So are these guys for a Farside Enclaves detachment? It kind of depends on how you want to define that. If you want to define it by keyword, no. If you want to define that by paint scheme, yes. So I'm not using them. I'm not using them generally as Farside Enclaves on the tabletop. I tend to have a headcanon that um, my army is a Vior Law army, or sometimes a Tau Sept army even, but generally a Vior Law army that's actually kind of a sleeper cell for the Farside Enclaves, and that's how I justify having the Farside Enclaves color scheme while not using the Farside Enclaves Septenet. And I do recognize that it probably would make more sense for it to be the other way around, have them be painted as Vior Law and use the Farside Enclave Septenet instead of um, painted as Farsight and not using it. But you know what? That's what we're doing. That's how we're making this work. That's how we go to bed at night. And of course, right now I'm doing a very sloppy job putting this black down. My process here is pretty simple. So I prime this with Army Painter Red Dragon. Then I go ahead and do my basic blocking with black and brown. On top of that, black is going to be black, of course, and then brown is going to be my grays and metallics, grays and whites and metallics. And those are kind of the three main colors of my color scheme. And once I have those down, I will either take a very sloppy brush or an airbrush to it and put down a layer of Vallejo red, not red gore, it's gory red. Red gore was the old Citadel color. Gory red, put that down, and that's how I get my overall red coloring for my army. And then I go about gradually working on all the other colors, and eventually bringing in my greens and non-core colors as well on top of that once I get everything worked up. So yeah, that's the process. We're still obviously very early on in that process. We don't have a ton of progress made yet. Um, and of course, today's live stream is um, today's live stream is brought to you by Tabletop Ready Miniatures, our new sponsor. If you guys missed the last stream, I am happy to say that we do have a sponsor for the channel right now. I think we're going to do a lot of good work together. And so please, if you like the channel, if you enjoy what we're doing here, go ahead and give their website a peruse. They do retail at a pretty good discount, uh, as well as offering free shipping on certain orders. And then also they are a commission painting service. And so they can take care of you from start to finish over there at tabletopreadyminiatures.com. So like I said, if you want to support the channel, uh, heading over to their website, tell them I sent you. It helps out a lot. And the answer is yes, I am psychic. That's how I knew you guys would be hanging out on the internet at 11 o'clock at night or whatever it is where you are. Of course, I know exactly what time it is because I am a psychic, but I'm trying to be, inclusive here. Can't go through the full list of times for every Jimmy, John, and Paul watching. Run out of warp charges if that's how we had to play it. But yeah, so I'm excited about the announcement tomorrow. I'm not holding my breath for Tau stuff. I do think like the most likely scenario is that they mean, by everyone they mean most most armies, not actually us. I think they're like, well, you're Tau. You didn't actually think we were going to do something for you, did you? Within the realm of psychic powers, but I would be so happy if they brought the amulet of Arthas Moloch back. That would be pretty darn nice. Some iteration of that would definitely be welcomed. So, yeah, this is my least favorite part of painting. I really much prefer the fine scale stuff, but this coursework just always makes me feel like I'm doing a bad job because I do it sloppy. It's not. This isn't a pretty phase, and especially when I start off with black, I feel like this could be an advertisement for two thin coats. Just with how messy this is. Basically, I already talked about the overall color process here, but one of the more tedious steps after this is just going up and cleaning up all the mess I made. So I'll go back with Mephiston Red generally and clean up all these spots where I have not stayed inside the lines. And Mephiston Red is not a perfect match for this. It's not a very good match at all. But for the areas that I need it, it does a good enough job. And typically, those areas are areas that are going to be highlighted up anyway. And so that coloring, even though it's not quite right, for one thing, gets covered up, but also kind of helps accentuate that highlight because it's lighter than the surrounding area. So kind of like a pre-shade. Okay. So, right, I have my hazard suit here. I have two more crisis suits that need to be painted. I have this Cold Star that needs to be painted too. Since I'm on a timeline for a tournament, a narrative event, I'm not gonna start down that rabbit hole. Instead, I'm going to transition towards making progress on these guys that I need sooner rather than later. And that means doing the second part of what I just told you about, getting into the browns here. All right. Not so if not psychic stuff, what do I think the next big announcement for Tau will be? Um, Probably, well, I think probably the next big announcement for Tau will be when they get their new codex, which I expect to happen at some point. What that actually entails, aside from getting a new codex, I would tend to think that we would see some movement on Kroot and Vespid. And I say that both as someone that is a fan of auxiliaries, but also someone that um, has kind of, if you look at the types of things that they're putting out now, if you're looking at the the direction that they've gone with product, it certainly has been meeting longstanding demand. Right, so they're looking at their current product line. They're saying, what are things that people have been asking for a long time that we just haven't done because of X, Y, and Z reasons. And it seems to me like Kroot, Vespid are at that same kind of level as some of the other stuff that they've done. Not all of it, right? I mean, Sisters of Battle, of course, are much, much more in demand than Kroot are, but nonetheless, I think you could make an argument for Kroot being in a region of the game that kind of fits that MO. So I do this brown layer for my grays because it's just such a nicer transition from brown to gray than anything else that I've been able to figure out. Right, like I could just slap like Eshin gray down on here instead, but the brown kind of does a little bit of shading for me, goes with what I want. I don't want like a strong I don't want like a drastic sharp contrast. The brown is warm, a warm color that goes with the warm red tones, and so having it as the base for my whites and grays, I think works out pretty well. At least I like it. Yeah, so like some sort of earthcast technology taking the role of psychic powers, I think is an not too far out there idea for how they could do something like endless spells for Tau. I think it's much more likely that they would go that route than anything to do with actual psychers. With the exception of something like the amulet of, or the talisman of Arthas Moloch, right? Like that's not a psyker, but it is derived from the warp. So that's something that they could bring in that would be a little bit more on the nose. Yeah, these are going to be painted in the Farsight Enclave's color scheme. Yeah. So I think this week we're going to do. Some work with. Well, I'm going to do another video for the 2019 update series. I think at this point I've just decided that the smoothest way to do that is just kind of work my way through the codex sequentially. So that means probably the next video would be on ethereals. But if you guys have opinions on what you would like me to talk about next, put them in the chat. Let me know, because you gotta be present to win, I guess. So I'm happy to change the schedule if it means addressing things that you guys are more interested in. Way too much paint on that brush. Ooh, that's rough. Okay. Yeah, so I kind of want, so with these Chasvray, I gave them the shoulder pads that have fewer panels on them, and that's because I kind of want to do, well, I've decided that I want to do the same thing with these shoulder pads as I did with my breachers, and that's to give them a much higher fraction of gray area than they normally have, or at least in comparison to kind of like the lower level dudes. So the Chaswi have the more complicated shoulder pad, but it'll be visually less stimulating because it's gonna be primarily red. Whereas this one, the Chasvray, is gonna have a lot more white and gray on it. All right. So I think I'm just gonna finish putting the gray on this guy here and wrap up. I kind of said the little bit that I wanted to say about psychic powers, and yeah. So if you guys have questions in the chat, now is the time to get it out. Don't go to bed with those questions in your head. Get them out so that we can talk about them. You'll sleep much better. By the way, I'm pretty excited. Of course, it's the end of August, but I have some really fun plans already for next April Fools. Some good videos in mind, and I probably will film them far in advance and have them ready to go. All right. Yeah, I have no idea if I actually want this whole thing to be gray like this, but that's what I'm going for right now. That might be overkill. That might be too much. Do I think the Ivara will get a points drop in the next chapter approved? I hope so. I think it's, I think we talked about that last stream, that it's way overcosted compared to your other options right now. So I hope the Ivara gets a points reduction in the new codex, or in the new chapter approved, but I'm also not going to hold my breath for that. Hey, did you guys see that World of Warcraft ad today that they released, the tavern tavern jig? That song's been stuck in my head all day. I think I even posted it. Yeah, I did. I posted about it on on YouTube, saying, yeah, that's the sweet siren song of that game. All right. Yeah. So I think I hope the Ivara gets a point reduction. It needs it. A review of tournament winning towels and why they work. I did that. Well, I guess that was a while ago that I did that last time. I think a lot of the tournament winning. Well, for one thing, there haven't been a ton of like GT winning towel lists lately. But in the recent past, I did that for for a list, but a lot of them are, basically things that we talk about in our day-to-day videos on this channel. We talk about certain units being strong, other units being relatively weak, and why that is. And I, I think that's pretty much the same advice that those tournament winners would give you when speaking about their own list. Not to say that I am a GT winning player. I'm not, but I think the theory craft behind it is legit. I think what we talk about for Tau and the things that work for Tau and the things that don't work for Tau, I think that kind of academics, if you will, is consistent with what you see on top tables. Yeah, Tau have won some major events recently, but it's not like every event. I still see people talk about Tau as a suboptimal army, and the reason for that is because they're not consistently winning huge events. Okay. Crisis suit as troops. I think they're largely going away. Yes, it would make sense for, especially for Farside enclaves, to have crisis suits as troops, but they've largely gone away from that with the way that 8th edition detachments work. So I wouldn't hold my breath for that. Would I like it? Yeah. Do I think it'd be cool? Yeah. Do I think it's justifiable in several different ways? Yeah. But do I think it's going to happen? No. Yeah, the 9 Piranha list is exactly the list that I'm thinking of when I'm talking about us doing a video going through exactly why it worked. I think the player even commented on that video and was largely in agreement with my analysis. So I think he said I kind of I was like 98% there. Basically, there was like some detail with how he deployed things that I didn't pick up on just based on the list. So yeah, but for the most part, I had deduced the I had deduced his strategy based on the list fairly accurately. But yeah, so there's that video is in the channel archive somewhere if you want to check it out. All right, what should it? So old crisis suits didn't have these knee pads. Do I want those knee pads to be red or gray? I feel like looking at the front of this suit, there is a lot of red and not very much gray. So let's mix it up. Let's put some gray on this guy. Let's get at it. We'll leave like the little tiny part in the middle or on the bottom as red. Or is that dumb? Well, it's not necessarily dumb, but it's probably going to be hard to maintain potentially. Yeah, we're going to go for it. We're going to see how it goes. At least for these ones where it's just the blip on the bottom, we'll leave it. Maybe for the ones where it's in the center, we won't do that. Just because I don't really like the bullseye coloring. Yeah, I think that'll look cool. That'll be good. All right, I'm happy with that. This type of blocking. Yeah, so like that's roughly the starting position for these suits. A lot of red, a lot of black, a little bit of brown that will later become gray. All right. Would you do videos on unit synchronization, especially non-standard syncs at work, getting into more detail than the single unit specific videos ones and multi-unit syncs? So by syncs, I'm guessing you mean like synergy to combos, basically. Yeah, that is definitely something that I should do. So yeah, let's do it. Let's make it happen. Totally forgot about this little supporting system here. Multi-tracker. And of course, because I have these Shaz Varay that I am going to allow to switch in to be commanders in XV8s, I had to magnetize them and not put in support systems for them right away, which was another thing that I didn't do in my hurry to get them assembled, is I forgot to put in support systems. So we'll see how my timing goes on all of this. But if it goes well enough, we will. What is going on here? I'll go ahead and put supporting systems on the rest of the suits too. Okay, so there must be a little piece of sand or something on this magnet. Probably because there's a bunch of sand that's falling off this base that is getting all over my paper towel here. Okay, scraped off some. There we go. Looks much better. Okay, cool. That guy's blocked. Ready to go. All right, that's going to be it for painting for me tonight. All right, do I think with all the emphasis on stratagems, the one detachment should be 3 points at least? So like, yeah. No, no, I think like the 1 point detachment is fairly reasonable considering that they generally allow you to circumvent the restrictions of the others. So having 3 points would lessen that. I think having it be 1 command point makes there be a real opportunity cost to going with like an outrider detachment or something. So I think that's a reasonable cost. Of course, as someone that runs a lot of outrider detachments, would I complain if I got more command points for it? No, but I don't think that's something that's necessary with an eye to balance. Of course, I don't have all the data that the dev team have, so it certainly could be the case that those detachments are undervalued with command points. So they might add a couple points here or there. I think 3 is probably high. Maybe if they were to up it to 2, I think that would be a more realistic shift. But overall, I think it's fine at 1. Really, I like that gives you a real incentive to take the bigger, bulkier detachments. Okay, cool. So that is going to be it for me tonight. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's announcement. Again, I'm not expecting a whole lot for Tau, but fingers crossed that we get something fun to play with, regardless of what it actually is. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Of course, as I mentioned before, if you like these streams, if you like what I've been doing on the channel, please. Don't be afraid to hit like and subscribe, but also show some love to our new sponsor, Tabletop Ready Miniatures. So, all right, thanks for watching, everybody, and of course, Happy wargaming.